The tortilla takeover, a new front in Mexico's drug war. The smell of freshly made tortillas, once a comforting aroma in the heart of Mexico, has taken on a sinister edge. The world associates Mexico's criminal underworld with drug cartels, notorious for their brutality and vast trafficking networks. Yet, in a chilling twist, these criminal enterprises have infiltrated a new market, the production and distribution of tortillas. This staple food, a cornerstone of Mexican cuisine and culture, has become the latest battleground in Mexico's ongoing drug war. The cartels, driven by a lust for profit and power, are tightening their grip on the tortilla industry, leaving a trail of fear, extortion, and violence in their wake. For generations, the rhythmic patting of hands forming masa into tortillas has been a familiar sound in Mexican homes and small businesses. It represents a tradition, a source of livelihood, and a symbol of cultural identity. Now, this simple act of making tortillas is overshadowed by the looming presence of organized crime. Cartels, recognizing the essential nature of tortillas in the Mexican diet, have seized the opportunity to exploit this vital industry. Their objective is not merely to profit from tortillas themselves, but to exert control over a product so deeply ingrained in Mexican society that its control equates to power. The cartels' foray into the tortilla trade is a testament to their ruthless business acumen. Recognizing the limitations of relying solely on drug trafficking, they have diversified their criminal portfolio. This diversification strategy involves infiltrating legitimate businesses, such as the tortilla industry, to launder money, generate alternative revenue streams, and tighten their grip on local communities. Their tactics are as brutal as they are effective, employing a combination of violence, intimidation, and extortion to subdue competitors and bend local businesses to their will. This incursion into the tortilla trade is not merely a business decision, it's a strategic power play. By dominating the production and distribution of a product as essential as tortillas, the cartels aim to assert their dominance over daily life in Mexico. They seek to control not just the physical territory, but the very fabric of society, dictating terms to businesses and instilling fear in the hearts of ordinary citizens. The tortilla, once a symbol of Mexican heritage and sustenance, is rapidly becoming a token of fear and oppression in the hands of ruthless criminal organizations. From cocaine to corn, the cartel's diversification strategy. The cartel's expansion into the tortilla industry marks a significant shift in their operations. For years, their primary focus was the drug trade, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, funneling narcotics across the border into the United States. This highly lucrative business brought in billions, fueling their expansion and arming them for bloody turf wars. However, the cartels are not solely driven by greed. They crave power, influence, and control. This ambition has led them to diversify their criminal enterprises, seeking new avenues for profit and dominance. The tortilla industry, with its deep roots in Mexican society and its relatively simple production process, presented an irresistible opportunity for the cartels. It offered a readily available market, a product in high demand, and a chance to infiltrate the very fabric of daily life in Mexico. This move was not about abandoning the drug trade, but about expanding their portfolio, creating a more diversified and resilient criminal empire. By embedding themselves within legitimate businesses, the cartels could launder money, evade scrutiny, and project an image of legitimacy, all while tightening their grip on communities. This diversification strategy is not limited to tortillas. Cartels have infiltrated various sectors of the Mexican economy. From avocado farms and lime orchards to mining operations and transportation networks, their influence is pervasive. They extort businesses, control supply chains, and manipulate markets, accumulating wealth and power at an alarming rate. This expansion beyond drug trafficking poses a significant challenge to law enforcement and government authorities. The cartel's move into legitimate businesses is a calculated and chillingly effective strategy. It allows them to operate under the guise of normalcy, blending into the economic landscape while continuing their criminal activities. This blurring of lines between the underworld and the legitimate world makes it increasingly difficult to combat their influence, as their tentacles reach deeper into the fabric of Mexican society. The tortilla, a symbol of Mexican culture, has become a pawn in their game of power and control. Sowing fear, harvesting profits, violence in the tortilla trade. The cartel's incursion into the tortilla industry is not a bloodless takeover. Their methods are as brutal as they are effective, employing violence and intimidation to subdue competition and instill fear in local communities. Tortilla producers who refuse to comply with cartel demands often face dire consequences, ranging from extortion and threats to arson and murder. The message is clear: cooperate or face the consequences. Shootings in broad daylight, tortillerias going up in flames, and bodies dumped on the roadside serve as grim reminders of the cartel's ruthlessness. These acts of violence are not merely about eliminating competition. they are about sending a message. They aim to terrorize the community, silencing dissent and ensuring compliance through fear. This climate of fear has a chilling effect on society, discouraging people from speaking out or resisting the cartel's advances. The violence extends beyond direct attacks on businesses. Cartel members often extort local businesses, demanding a piece or regular payment in exchange for protection. This extortion racket affects not only tortilla producers, but also a wide range of small businesses, from shopkeepers and restaurant owners to taxi drivers and street vendors. This widespread extortion scheme creates a climate of fear and insecurity, stifling economic growth and trapping communities in a cycle of violence and poverty. The cartel's use of violence in the tortilla trade is a chilling reminder of their power and their willingness to use it to achieve their goals. This brutality is not just a tactic, it's a message. It's a message to the community: we are in control, and defiance will be met with swift and brutal retribution. This violence has devastating consequences, not just for the individuals and businesses targeted, but for the social fabric of entire communities. It erodes trust, stifles economic activity, and creates a pervasive sense of fear and hopelessness. The price of resistance, stories of defiance and loss. Despite the risks, some brave individuals and communities have chosen to resist the cartel's encroachment on the tortilla industry. These acts of defiance, while often met with brutal reprisals, demonstrate the courage and resilience of those determined to protect their livelihoods and their way of life. These stories of resistance, though often tragic, offer a glimmer of hope in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. One such story is that of Doña Maria, a grandmother who ran a small tortilleria in her village for decades. When the cartel demanded a cut of her profits, she refused, stating that her tortillas were made with love, not fear. Her defiance was met with swift and brutal retribution. Her tortilleria was burned to the ground and she was forced to flee her home, leaving behind everything she knew and loved. In another town, a group of tortilla producers banded together, forming a cooperative to resist cartel extortion. They pooled their resources, shared information, and vowed to protect one another. Their unity, however, was short-lived. The cartel, threatened by their collective action, responded with a wave of violence. Several members of the cooperative were killed, their businesses destroyed, sending a chilling message to anyone who dared to challenge their authority. These stories of resistance, while often ending in tragedy, highlight the human cost of the cartel's takeover of the tortilla industry. They are a stark reminder that behind the headlines and statistics are real people whose lives have been shattered by this conflict. These stories also underscore the need for greater protection and support for those who choose to resist cartel extortion and violence. Their courage deserves to be acknowledged and their sacrifices remembered. Beyond drugs, the cartel's grip on local economies. The cartel's influence extends far beyond the drug trade and the tortilla industry. They have infiltrated various sectors of the Mexican economy, tightening their grip on local communities and amassing wealth and power at an alarming rate. This diversification strategy is not just about finding new revenue streams, it's about control. By controlling essential goods and services, the cartels can dictate terms to businesses, manipulate markets, and exert influence over entire communities. From avocado farms and lime orchards to mining operations and transportation networks, the cartel's presence is felt in every corner of the Mexican economy. They extort businesses, control supply chains, and manipulate prices, creating an environment of fear and uncertainty for legitimate businesses. This economic dominance allows them to launder money, fund their operations, and further expand their influence. The cartel's grip on local economies has devastating consequences for communities. It stifles economic growth, discourages investment, and perpetuates poverty. When businesses are forced to operate under the constant threat of extortion and violence, it creates an uneven playing field where only those aligned with the cartels can truly thrive. This undermines the rule of law, erodes trust in institutions, and creates a climate of impunity where criminal activity flourishes. The cartel's economic influence is not just a local problem, it has national and international implications. Their control over key industries and supply chains can disrupt global markets, driving up prices and affecting consumers worldwide. This underscores the need for a coordinated international effort to combat their influence and dismantle their criminal networks. Extortion and exploitation, crushing small businesses. Extortion is the lifeblood of the cartel's economic dominance. They systematically target small businesses, demanding a piece or a regular payment in exchange for protection. This protection racket affects a wide range of businesses, from shopkeepers and restaurant owners to taxi drivers and street vendors. Refusal to pay often results in threats, violence, or even the destruction of businesses. This widespread extortion scheme creates a climate of fear and insecurity, forcing business owners to make impossible choices. Paying the peso cuts into already thin profit margins, making it difficult to survive, let alone thrive. Refusal to pay, however, puts businesses and their owners at risk of retaliation, leaving them vulnerable to violence and intimidation. This impossible dilemma traps many small businesses in a cycle of fear and exploitation. The cartel's extortion rackets have a devastating impact on local economies. They stifle entrepreneurship, discourage investment, and force many small businesses to close their doors. This, in turn, leads to job losses, reduced economic activity, and a decline in the overall quality of life in affected communities. The constant threat of extortion also undermines the rule of law, creating an environment where criminal activity is tolerated and even encouraged. The cartel's exploitation of small businesses is a stark reminder of their ruthlessness and their disregard for the well-being of communities. Their actions are not just criminal, they are morally reprehensible, preying on the vulnerable and undermining the very fabric of society. Combating this extortion racket requires a multifaceted approach involving law enforcement, government support for small businesses, and community-based initiatives to promote security and resist cartel influence. Controlling the essentials cartels and the battle for resources. The cartel's reach extends beyond traditional economic sectors. They have also infiltrated the control of essential resources, such as water and corn, further tightening their grip on local communities and exacerbating existing social and economic inequalities. This control over vital resources gives them immense power, allowing them to dictate terms, manipulate prices, and exploit vulnerable populations for profit. Water, a precious commodity in many parts of Mexico, has become a valuable asset for the cartels. They have been known to seize control of wells and water sources, diverting water for their own use or selling it at exorbitant prices to desperate communities. This control over water gives them leverage over farmers, businesses, and entire communities who are forced to comply with their demands or face the consequences of drought and economic ruin. Similarly, the cartels have infiltrated the corn industry, a staple crop and the foundation of the tortilla. They control vast swaths of farmland, manipulate corn prices, and extort farmers and producers. This control over such an essential food source gives them immense power over the food security and economic well-being of local communities, who are left at their mercy for this dietary staple. The cartel's control over essential resources like water and corn is a chilling reminder of their ruthlessness and their willingness to exploit basic human needs for profit. This control exacerbates existing inequalities, pushing vulnerable communities further into poverty and despair. Addressing this issue requires a multi-pronged approach involving government intervention, community organizing, and sustainable resource management practices that prioritize the needs of the people over the greed of criminal organizations. Section 8. The corrupted system cartel influence in Mexican politics. The cartel's influence in Mexico extends far beyond the economic sphere. It permeates the very fabric of society, reaching into the heart of the political system. Through bribery, intimidation, and violence, they have corrupted officials at all levels of government, undermining the rule of law and eroding public trust in institutions. This infiltration of the political system allows them to operate with impunity, secure favorable policies, and evade justice. Cartels employ a sophisticated network of bribery to influence politicians, judges, and law enforcement officials. They offer vast sums of money, threats, or even violence to ensure their cooperation or silence. Those who refuse to comply often face dire consequences, ranging from career sabotage to threats against their families or even assassination. This climate of fear and corruption creates an environment where the cartel's influence goes unchecked, allowing them to operate with virtual impunity. The consequences of cartel influence in politics are devastating. It undermines the legitimacy of the government, erodes public trust, and creates a culture of cynicism and apathy. When citizens believe that their elected officials are corrupt and that the justice system is rigged, they are less likely to cooperate with authorities or participate in civic life. This creates a vicious cycle where lawlessness thrives and the cartel's power grows unchecked. Combating cartel influence in politics requires a comprehensive and sustained effort. It involves strengthening institutions, promoting transparency and accountability, and empowering citizens to hold their elected officials accountable. It also requires addressing the root causes of corruption, such as poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity, which create fertile ground for criminal networks to thrive. Section 9. Law enforcement overwhelmed. The struggle to combat cartel power. Mexico's law enforcement agencies face an uphill battle in their fight against the cartels. Outgunned, outmanned, and often outmaneuvered, they struggle to contain the violence, disrupt criminal networks, and bring perpetrators to justice. The cartel's vast resources, Sophisticated tactics and corrupting influence pose significant challenges to even the most dedicated and well-intentioned law enforcement efforts. The cartels possess vast arsenals, often surpassing the firepower of local and even federal law enforcement agencies. They have access to military-grade weapons, grenades, and even armored vehicles, allowing them to engage in open warfare with authorities. This disparity in firepower makes it extremely dangerous for law enforcement to confront the cartels directly, putting officers at a significant disadvantage. Beyond firepower, the cartels employ sophisticated tactics, including intelligence gathering, corruption, and intimidation, to evade capture and maintain their grip on power. They have networks of informants within law enforcement agencies, providing them with inside information and tipping them off about upcoming operations. This corruption within the ranks further undermines law enforcement efforts and makes it incredibly difficult to build solid cases against cartel leaders. Addressing the challenges facing law enforcement requires a multi-pronged approach. It involves providing adequate resources and training to officers, strengthening anti-corruption measures within law enforcement agencies, and fostering greater cooperation and intelligence sharing between local, state, and federal agencies. It also requires addressing the root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of opportunity, to prevent the next generation from falling prey to cartel recruitment. Section 10. A mass exodus migration fueled by cartel violence. The relentless violence and extortion perpetrated by the cartels have created a climate of fear and insecurity, driving many Mexicans from their homes and contributing to the ongoing migration crisis. Families flee their communities, seeking refuge from the violence and hoping for a better future for themselves and their children. This mass exodus has devastating consequences for both Mexico and the United States, straining resources, fueling social tensions, and tearing families apart. The stories of those fleeing cartel violence are heartbreaking. Families forced to abandon their homes, businesses, and livelihoods, leaving behind everything they knew and loved. They embark on perilous journeys, often risking their lives to escape the clutches of the cartels and seek safety and opportunity elsewhere. Many head north, towards the United States, hoping for asylum or a chance to build a new life, even if it means living in the shadows. This mass exodus has profound consequences for Mexico. It drains communities of their most productive members, weakens the social fabric, and perpetuates a cycle of poverty and violence. The loss of human capital hinders economic development as skilled workers and entrepreneurs flee, leaving behind a void difficult to fill. The departure of families also tears at the social fabric of communities, leaving behind a sense of loss and despair. The migration crisis fueled by cartel violence is not just a Mexican problem, it's a regional and even global issue. It highlights the interconnectedness of security, economic opportunity, and human rights. Addressing this crisis requires a multifaceted approach involving regional cooperation, economic development, and addressing the root causes of violence and instability that drive people to flee their homes. Section 11. Voices of Courage. Communities resisting cartel control. Despite the pervasive fear and the high cost of defiance, courageous voices are rising in Mexico, refusing to be silenced by the cartel's reign of terror. Communities are coming together, organizing themselves, and demonstrating remarkable resilience in their efforts to reclaim their streets, protect their livelihoods, and rebuild their lives. These acts of resistance, while often dangerous, offer a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. In some communities, residents have formed self-defense groups, arming themselves to protect their families and their property from cartel violence. These groups, while often operating outside the law, represent a desperate attempt to fill the security vacuum left by ineffective or corrupt law enforcement. They patrol their neighborhoods, confront cartel operatives, and strive to create a semblance of safety in their communities. Other communities are resisting cartel influence through peaceful means. They organize protests, speak out against extortion and violence, and demand accountability from their elected officials. They establish community watch programs, work to strengthen social ties, and create opportunities for youth to steer them away from cartel recruitment. These efforts, while often facing intimidation and threats, demonstrate the power of collective action and the unwavering spirit of those determined to reclaim their communities. The stories of resistance against cartel control are a testament to the courage and resilience of the Mexican people. They demonstrate that even in the face of overwhelming odds, there is always hope. These grassroots movements, while facing significant challenges, offer a powerful reminder that change is possible and that the fight for a safer, more just and peaceful Mexico continues. Their efforts deserve recognition, support, and solidarity from the international community. Section 12. The future of the tortilla: hope and uncertainty. The future of the tortilla in Mexico hangs in the balance, caught between the cartel's grip on power and the resilience of communities fighting for their livelihoods and their way of life. The outcome of this struggle will have profound implications not just for the tortilla industry, but for the very fabric of Mexican society. Will the cartels tighten their grip, transforming this staple food into a symbol of fear and oppression? Or will the spirit of resistance prevail, reclaiming the tortilla as a symbol of Mexican heritage and resilience? The challenges ahead are immense. The cartels' deep roots, vast resources, and corrupting influence pose a formidable threat. Addressing this issue requires a multifaceted approach involving effective law enforcement, robust economic development, social programs to strengthen communities, and unwavering political will to dismantle criminal networks and end impunity. Despite the daunting challenges, there is hope. The courage of communities resisting cartel control, the dedication of honest law enforcement officials, and the growing awareness of the issue both domestically and internationally offer glimmers of light amidst the darkness. The international community must stand in solidarity with Mexico, providing support for its efforts to combat organized crime, strengthen its institutions, and create a more just and equitable society. The future of the tortilla is not just about a food staple, it's about the future of Mexico. It's about the fight for security, justice, and the right to live in peace and dignity. It's a fight that demands the attention, support, and solidarity of the world. The outcome of this struggle will determine not just what Mexicans eat, but how they live, how they are governed, and what kind of future they will bequeath to generations to come.